Hello, everybody, and welcome in. My name's Griffin.
And I'm John.
And we've got a lot to cover today, including the brand that made my family's first DVD player is now making a whole fleet of e-bikes.
I'll give you a hint. They look pretty sharp.
That's right. We've also got a ton of different battery-related questions, including which brand makes the best long-lasting one, which e-bikes are the easiest to ride around on a depleted battery, and are there mobile battery charging options?
We'll get you powered up with answers to those later on.
And then finally, we will take a look at some auto-shifting e-bikes.
All that and more on this week's episode of the Weekly Recharge.
All right, so let's get started with the headlines in the e-bike world this week, starting with
Tariffs.
That's right.
More.
We're going to make this one pretty quick, though, because it is some stuff you may have already heard about, but we'll give the e-bike spin to it. So the legitimacy of many of the Trump administration tariffs has been called into question yet again. The Federal Circuit Appeals Court ruled last week that the Global Liberation Day tariffs put into place under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act were illegal. The court stated that the core congressional power to impose taxes such as tariffs is vested exclusively in the legislative branch by the Constitution. Therefore, tariffs are a core congressional power. Now, the tariffs will remain in place until at least October 14th. President Trump did ask the Supreme Court for an expedited ruling in November. Otherwise, a decision may not be made until next summer if the Supreme Court accepts the case. So right now, the tariffs apply to around 70% of all U.S. imports, but that number would be reduced to about 16% if the ruling is upheld. Yep. And where e-bikes are concerned, that would not affect the 25% Section 301 tariffs on imports from China that began in 2024, nor the Section 232 tariffs on materials, but it would affect reciprocal and fentanyl tariffs put into place by the Trump administration. So as always, we will see how things shape out here and keep you posted. For me, I'm mainly curious, it's been floated out there that some brands might be getting some type of refund from the government here if this does end up being upheld. I'm kind of curious, if that money goes back to the e-bike brands, what does that do for people who paid another $100, $200 price hike on their products to deal with these tariffs? Do they get a refund from the brand, from the government? How's it all going to shake out? It's kind of a bit of a mystery right now, but
there's a lot of ideas out there. Some of them are very lengthy and complicated, but yeah, it's all up in the air at this point in time.
Guess we'll just wait and see.
That's right. But moving on to some discussions about e-bike launches, primarily over in the UK. So starting off with a bike called the Cactus, and that is from Raleigh. It is priced at £1,899, which is about $2,500 here, although I do believe it is only going to be in the UK, at least for the time being. But this is intended to be an affordable mid-drive commuter e-bike. It's decked out with the 250-watt Bosch Active Line mid-drive. It's got an EU appropriate speed limit of 25 kilometers per hour, or about 15.5 miles per hour. It has a 400 watt-hour battery with an advertised range of up to 70 miles. And then it's also got a 9-speed drivetrain from Shimano and brakes from Shimano. So that's Qs on the drivetrain and the MT200 hydraulic disc system for brakes. The bike has both step-through and mid-step frame styles that look pretty different here. And they've got some spec differences as well. The ST model has a Suntour NEX suspension fork, and the battery on that bike, is mounted to the cargo rack. But then on the mid-step frame, that one has a rigid fork and a down tube mounted battery, but then both have 50 millimeter wide tires just to add some extra comfort. And then they're decked out for commuting with lights, fenders, a chain guard, and a cargo rack. So Raleigh put out a statement about sort of their intention for these bikes. It says, by bringing Bosch E-System technology to a bike priced under £2,000, Raleigh is setting a new benchmark for value in the e-bike market. Riders can now enjoy the same level of safety, reliability, and refinement found in higher-end models at a price that makes switching to electric more accessible than ever. So looking at these, it's definitely interesting to me that there are some big spec and just visual differences between the models. I think, usually we see a little bit more unified design and specs that are generally the same. But there's some options out there for different preferences. And I think it also just makes a lot of sense for a premium brand to kind of target more of this entry level market where there are a lot of other big players at the moment.
I say we've seen some other big names in bike, try to break into that more affordable market.
Trek just did that.
Trek just did that, of course. And then, it's pretty interesting here to see Bosch on something a little bit more affordable. Mm-hmm. They've been very selective with their partners, usually on mid to high tier, types of bikes. Raleigh, of course, has a great track record themselves. So really cool to see that type of tech coming to something that's affordable. So, UK audience, let us know what you think about it when it is available over there.
yeah, might get our hands on it. We'll see.
Yeah. So next up, as we mentioned before, a new brand name is popping into the world of e-bikes. This one caught me by surprise, as it is Sharp. I had to reach back in my memory banks and realize they were the ones who made our DVD player that we bought in the 90s. So that was
I had a TV from them. Yeah,
exactly. So a bit of a random one, but kind of interesting here. So they are debuting their e-bikes at the Innovation for All show in Berlin. There are 15 different models that they are debuting here with different spec tiers. Pretty wild. So categories include just about everything with a city bike, commuter bike, cruisers, folders, and utility models as well. Now, in many cases, the bikes do look pretty like standard, dare I say, kind of copycatish with some like popular things we're seeing out there on the market.
For sure.
There are a couple of different looking ones, some unique options here as well. So the RS08 hybrid city e-bike is pretty interesting. It appears to use the mortise and tenon construction, so it can actually like break down into small pieces and parts, kind of like the Van Powers City Dancer does.
Yep.
It's got a 250 watt hub motor, which is paired with a single speed Gates belt drive. Also has a 252 watt hour battery with an advertised range of up to 80 kilometers or 50 miles. A charge time of 2 to 3 hours, a color display, and pairing with the Sharp Life app. Weighs in at 18.3 kilograms or about 40 pounds.
Manageable.
Pretty manageable. The other one that kind of caught my eye was the BM07 folding e-bike. Now, this is a relatively unique one. It has a magnesium frame and wheels, 250 watt hub motor with 6-speed Shimano Tourney drivetrain, 360 watt hour battery with an advertised range up to 60 miles. That one weighs in at 23.4 kilograms or 51.5 pounds. So all are seemingly made for the UK with their 250 watt motors and max speeds of 15.5 miles per hour. We'll have to see if they make an appearance here in the US. But again, kind of interesting because it's not a brand looking to make dip a toe into the pool of e-bikes.
They're going all in.
Cannonball splashing with 15 different models, kind of wild.
It is, yeah. We'll see how it plays out and how these bikes are received. But then our last story for the week comes to us from Canyon Bikes. So their founder, Roman Arnold, is kind of returning to an active role as the executive chairman, and he's going to be replacing the company's current CEO. So Roman Arnold founded the company in 1996 and sold a majority share to an investment group in 2020 that was called GBL. And at that point in time, he left his role as CEO to take up a role as chairman in the advisory board. So then a little bit after that, in 2022, someone named Nicholas DeRose Wallace, he was a former VP at Nike. He stepped in to take the role of CEO. And since his time there, he's really helped to double the company's earnings. Pretty good track record there. So the company is struggling a little bit more this year. So that's definitely interesting. Sales are down 5%. The total earnings are down 30%. So DeRose Wallace is leaving, quote, by mutual agreement. And then Roman Arnold is going to be filling his role without actually taking on the title of CEO. And then a representative from Canyon put out a statement that said, there are no plans to look for a new CEO. Canyon will be managed and run by Executive Chairman Roman Arnold together with a strong global executive leadership team. So a little bit of a changing of the guard there, but it's nice to see a brand's founder returning to an active role and getting more of a say in the company they started.
Especially one with such a long history in this industry here. He's probably ridden the ups and downs as it's currently a bit of a down year for the brand, but it'll be interesting to see if he makes any changes. Canyon recently announced that they were going to switch a little bit from their DTC heavy model and do a little bit more focus on in-store experiences.
Yes.
Curious to see if they stick with that, if they go back to their roots. We'll see how things play out under the return of the original founder. But that's going to do it for this week's e-bike headlines.
All right, now let's take a look at some gear that we were sent to check out. So, Griffin, I'm actually going to ask you a question. You're kind of the hitch rack reviewer here at Electric Bike Report. So, I mean, when doing that, I have rarely helped you install one. Have you ever had trouble actually putting one on your car?
Yes, I have, actually, with a lot of them. Because, so for me, I drive a Tesla Model Y, which has a recessed hitch kind of into the bumper area itself.
Yeah.
So a lot of those racks are 50-ish pounds, give or take. And yeah, it's not the easiest thing to just kind of get it in there because I can't kind of flying blind a little bit, can't actually see it. So it is a little bit tricky sometimes to do it solo.
Cool. I mean, expectedly so. I don't think you're the only one out there. We've got a comment here that we'll run through, but the answer to that struggle is right here. This is called the Hitch Hacker. This was sent to us by, I believe, a local-ish company. No, San Diego. Okay. Anyway, but yeah, the intention for this product is just basically to help guide a single person putting a hitch onto a hitch mount receiver. So we got a comment that was pretty relevant here that I'm just going to read. It kind of ties into
timely
this.
comment for the arrival of this thing, for sure.
For sure. This was on your Best Racks video on YouTube from Mike H8228. He said, "You have your ideas and I have mine. I have a single 76-pound fat tire e-bike with 26-inch tires. On sale, I paid $699 for it, discounted on sale from $999. So I do not want to spend half the price of the bike on a hitch setup. I have a Class 3 2-inch receiver on my SUV. I chose a 400-pound rated Black Widow aluminum rack carrier because of both the price, $225 with shipping, and the weight of 36 pounds. I am 76 years old and not interested in a carrier that weighs so much I cannot put it easily into the receiver, nor that is overly complicated. I think you were mistaken to dismiss all cheaper carriers as you did in the introduction." Anyway, so yeah, this product is basically designed, it's got some magnets built in here. It attaches directly to the hitch receiver and just kind of gives you both a visual and a physical guide. It's got sort of this funnel shape so that when you are manhandling one of those racks into the receiver, that it just kind of helps get it in place. And it's also got sort of a flanged end here just to help prevent you from accidentally running in and damaging your paint. But yeah, pretty simple, basic product here. We will definitely try it out. I assume that'll be more.
I was going to say I'll have more racks to review. I'll definitely give this thing a whirl. This is kind of in that category of like why I like 3D printed things. It's just like lots of little ways to like adjust slightly, like this thing you're already doing, and this will make life a little bit easier. So it seems to hold that potential. Interested to fully test it out.
Yeah, definitely. This one is pretty cheap. It's basically $25 on Amazon. We will leave links down in the video description that you can use if you're interested in trying that out.
All right, now just a little peek behind the curtain what we got going on here. So it doesn't look like we have any bike videos going live. We did have a ton go out the door last week. But yeah, this week we did get a few more bikes in from Pucka Puppy, actually. So we got their Golden Retriever, their Boxer ST, and the trike that we talked about a couple weeks ago, the Rottweiler. So looking forward to seeing more from this brand. They're actually one of those brands that we got so many comments from our audience. We actually reached out, started working with Pucka Puppy. So just as a reminder, hey, we do check those comments. We do take your feedback in. So always let us know down below if there's a brand you're interested in having us test out. We'll do what we can. And it always helps too if you guys, kind of pester the brands a little bit on our behalf. It does go a long way to helping us get those products in. But we'll be reporting back over the coming weeks with the whole bunch of Pucka Puppy reviews. Make sure you're subscribed with that notification bell on to see all of those when they go live. So it is now officially September. We have some nice fall weather around the corner. I know for us here in the desert, we are stoked to not be riding in 100+ degree heat anymore. So in the spirit of that, John, where's a cool bike ride that people could go and potentially look at if they're ready for a nice long fall bike ride?
This week we are going to Fort Worth, Texas, and we're going to be talking about the Trinity River Trails. And I do want to mention that, just as e-bike reviewers, we belong to like a whole bunch of online communities, Facebook groups, that sort of thing. And so this was actually inspired by someone named Jeff Petrie that I saw on the Lectric Discover 2 owners group on Facebook. So Jeff, I don't know if you watch, but if you're out there, thank you very much. He had kind of highlighted this trail system. So Trinity River Trails. This is a network of over 100 miles of trails around the city that connect 31 neighborhoods and 21 parks around Fort Worth. So it runs primarily along the Trinity River and its tributaries, and then it caters to pedestrians, cyclists, runners, and equestrians. Primarily it's a trail. It helps you get around, it helps you get some exercise, but there's some really cool attractions here to talk about. So just some public art stuff up front. There's a mural tour that they call Painting the Trail. There are 31 stops along the way. You can find a map to that that we'll link to down in the description as well. And there's murals from a bunch of different artists on canal floodgates that kind of just help control the flow of the water and make those sort of industrial things look a little bit nicer. There's a place called Marine Creek Lake. There's a 6-mile loop around the lake that just have some really scenic views. There's some boardwalks to ride around. You can do fishing there if you want. There's a place called Airfield Falls Conservation Park. It houses the largest natural waterfall in Tarrant County. And there's also some really cool parts of a McDonnell Douglas C9 plane in the middle of the park there. There's also fishing at Trinity Park and River Park. Trout season is coming up in the winter, so if that's an interesting thing for you, check it out. And then just other locations around the trails. There's 8 stops where you can do paddleboarding, canoeing, kayaking, all that kind of stuff. And then there's also a cool geocaching tour with 30 different stops. That sounds like a pretty cool family activity, I think.
You ever get into the geocaching scene?
I have friends.
A bunch of my friends did. I never did though.
I was in the same boat where it always it seemed cool and very appealing to me. I just never actually went out and did it. So it's never too late.
Maybe we'll start doing that this year. We'll make it a personal goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But anyway, this trail system does allow e-bikes. So the rules say pedal assist e-bikes specifically. So I would imagine that to be kind of the usual class 1 only. But I just really appreciated seeing not only the length and complexity of the system and all the stuff along the way, but it just reminded me of what we have here in St. George, Utah. We've got the Virgin River Trail system that we talked about on episode 1 of the show. This is just much larger. If you're in the Fort Worth area, this is a great way to participate.
Everything's bigger in Texas. That's why it's much.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Griffin. Yeah.
Well, I do.
Very good. Well, again, thank you to Jeff Petrie who posted about this. And if you have trail system, just infrastructure in your city that's something you really appreciate and get to take advantage of, let us know down in the comments section. We'd love to talk about it on the show. You can also email us at questions@electricbikereport.com.
So as always, we love engaging with our audience. You guys are the absolute best. And this section is all about you. We're jumping into your questions and comments that you've left us on YouTube videos, comments on the website, or sometimes at questions@electricbikereport.com that you can always email into.
That's right.
So let's get things started off with a question from Savory Chicken 41 on the Best for Seniors YouTube video. It says, how reliable are these bikes and how long do the batteries last? Those are the big questions I think many of us have.
That's why we're talking about it first here.
All right, let's
Absolutely.
do
So, generally speaking, anything that is going to be highlighted in our best videos, the best lists on our website, the best e-bikes of all sizes and types, those are all going to be made from manufacturers that have a reputation for making lasting products. And, in the event that there's any components that might be questionable, we always try to point those out. But overall reliability and battery life, those things are going to be determined by a variety of factors. So we've got, build quality, we've got the quality of the bike's individual components, and, where and how the bike is used. So in regards to our testing, we run through bikes relatively quickly. We don't really do long-term testing, but we do continuously use a lot of the bikes that we have, just, in personal time.
I was gonna say, most of our reviews, you're getting like the first 100 to 200 miles and lots of in-depth stuff with it. But of course, going beyond that's just a little bit hard to do with the volume and sheer amount of bikes that we get in a year to go much deeper than that.
But we do often, trade the bikes that we have, at our house for personal use with new things that come in the door
all the time.
Anyway, that said, it's pretty rare that any e-bike really totally dies on us or stops working. But, outside of anecdotal experience after our reviews, we don't really have any information, on longevity. So that's, definitely something more on the consumer side. People who have, used things daily, that sort of thing. Anyway, looking actually at the products that we review, we typically find that name brand parts are generally likely to last longer or, need replaced less, need maintenance less than those without brand names or made by less proven companies. And then as for battery life, that's going to depend on a few really big things. So the battery packs are made up of individual cells. We've kind of talked about this a little bit before. The cells look very similar to, your AA, AAA batteries, just larger. There are 3 big brands or companies that manufacture these that are, sort of household names at this point: Samsung, LG, and Panasonic. So generally our advice is to just look for bikes from brands that advertise that they use cells made by those 3 companies. Now, another component of battery longevity is the battery management system. So that's essentially like a piece of technology in the battery pack that includes programming and fail-safes to sort of help protect the battery, balance out its charge. There's fail-safes to make sure that the battery charges properly, that it doesn't overheat, and that if you plug the wrong charger into it, that it doesn't necessarily work at that point in time. And battery management systems vary, but overall, again, well-established companies use good products. But then finally, on the consumer side, how you use and charge and store your battery, those are all things that really can add to a bike's longevity. So, some basic charging tips: don't leave your battery on a charger all the time. Top it off as needed and, unplug it at that point. And then if you can avoid it, don't charge or deplete your battery fully when you are using it. It's actually recommended to keep your battery within 20 and 80% charge range. And if you're not using your bike for a while, to check that charge level monthly and kind of top it back up to within that range. But then if you let it sit for too long without charging and topping it off, then the individual cells inside the battery pack can actually drop in their voltage too low to the point that they can't actually hold a charge any longer. They can actually reverse their polarity, and that can cause the whole battery to fail. But there's a whole bunch of different types of lithium-ion batteries out there, different chemical makeups, but generally speaking, with e-bikes, you're looking at the number of charge cycles is going to be between 500 to 1,000, and so that means that they can be fully drained and recharged that many times. If you are using your bike, without fully depleting it and only charging it partially, that only uses a partial charge cycle, and that can basically help to extend your battery life. So if we're looking at that baseline, assuming a 500 charge cycle baseline, if you charge your battery 3 times a week, you should be able to get over 3 years of use. And then if you're only doing, partial charge cycles, then you could, potentially be longer. So the general range is 3 to 5 years, depending on how you use your bike and, all these other factors. So hopefully that helps. Again, we try to recommend products that are high quality. Those are things that perform well for us.
For sure. And most of the industry is kind of battery makers like that. Not a lot of them anymore. It's kind of a consolidated area. Most of them are coming from these big three. So again, with some proper care on your end, you're probably going to get a long life out of your battery. So It's a good breakdown, John.
Thanks.
So next up,
let's see. We've got from the Trek FX Plus 1S review on YouTube. This comes to us from Touraj, if I'm saying that correctly.
Sure.
Can you guys add the test for how well a bike moves when out of battery in your reviews?
We try to kind of incorporate that just a little bit. So with each bike, we have that speed test review or that speed test section. So we actually start those things off with no motor power, and we'll leave a little bit of commentary, just how it feels pushing it around yourself. Now, we talked about this, I believe, last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. We do kind of vary a little bit, our own personal output at that, no motor effort, just because we want to showcase what PAS1 or the first level of assist can actually do for a rider. But again, we will try and leave some commentary, hey, it feels a little bit heavy and sluggish, or it actually feels pretty good to ride around. So we will try and sprinkle that in a little bit to the reviews. Now, that being said, there are just some criteria or factors with every type of bike that kind of add up to what you would expect for a bike that rides easily or one that's a little bit more difficult. I'll start with the bad side, I suppose. So on the bad side, obviously, something that's heavy is hard to pedal, even if it's on wheels. So the higher the weight, usually harder to ride around. The styling of the bike can be a big factor as well. If you have something a little bit laid back and cruisery, it's usually not the most efficient for pedaling, like commuters, city bikes, things like that. Usually just the body positioning, geometry, full leg extension, all those different things, even a little bit more aerodynamic, if you're a little bit more tucked forward, those can all play a part in making the bike just easier to kind of move around. The tires, again, if it's a very wide tire, it's going to be a little bit sluggish. If it's got a chunkier tread pattern, that can also kind of feel like it's holding you back again. But on the opposite end of all this is kind of how you get your efficient bikes, right? So if you have a narrower tire, a bit of a more smoother tread pattern, that's going to make something that rolls pretty well. Gearing, of course, can play a factor here. If you have something with a lot of different gears, you can probably find one that feels the most comfortable to pedal in. If you are on a single speed, of course, that's going to be a little bit more limiting, especially tied in with all those other factors. A single speed on a 70-pound bike can definitely feel like a bit of a slog.
Definitely. I feel like if we're kind of looking at the extreme ends of the spectrum, on one side, we're going to have super light carbon fiber e-bikes with super narrow, smooth tires. On the other end, we're looking at, moped, fat tire, cargo e-bike, something like that. That's really big and heavy. And then the FX Plus 1, it's gonna kind of fall in the middle there,
kind of in the middle,
but a little bit more towards the easier end.
Yeah, so you can find bikes again, the city categories, usually the correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably the easiest ones to pedal around in
agree.
general.
Yeah.
And as John mentioned, something with carbon, like we did the Urtopia Carbon 1 review not long ago. It's a cruiser, but it's like a 41 pound like e-bike. Like that thing was very pleasant to pedal without a motor. Actually, it's the type of bike you could do it full time if you really wanted to. But you'll find some like good gems in there. The Trek FX Plus 1, I think, is a great example. Ride One Up Roadster V3 is maybe another good example of a bike that you can pedal without battery. That being said, e-bikes are fun when they are powered on. So
This is true. This is
always
true.
recommend you check your charge levels and familiarize yourself with your route. Get a good sense of judgment on how far you're going to be able to go on that battery. So you don't have to come across that. But yes, if you do, there are some lighter city bikes you could look into if you're going to be frequently pedaling without it. So
Absolutely.
all right, so next comes up from Joe Ellen Horn from the Best E-Bikes of 2025 on the website, actually, for this one. Says, I am 65 and currently have a Ride One Up Portola, and I like it a lot. Because I have a head injury, I sometimes forget to shift. Are there other bikes out there similar to the Lectric ONE that I should compare? Joe Ellen, sorry about the head injury on that one. But
I was going to just say, like, we even without head injuries forget to downshift, and we ride bikes all the time. Like, so don't go too hard on yourself, I guess.
If there is one thing e-bikes have kind of like ruined, it is my shifting habits, because especially with the ones with throttles, I have just forgotten totally to downshift before coming to a stop because I can just meep.
Yep, for sure. And that's something we'll get into here.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of making an assumption on this question that because you mentioned the Lectric ONE and its pinion gearbox that can automatically downshift, that you're kind of looking for something similar. With that in mind, and looking kind of in the Portola and Lectric ONE's price range, there really aren't a ton of options if you're trying to stay around that cost level, but there are some potential workarounds. So the easiest thing that you can do is just use the throttle. Like your Portola has a throttle, so you should definitely be able to use that to get up to speed again and then shift once you're moving. If you're looking to upgrade or switch to a different bike, you might look at like a single speed e-bike like the Ride One Up Roadster V3 or the Lectric XP Lite. Although, some of those, the gearing is sort of difficult to balance. So some of those can be a little bit difficult to start up from a stop. The Roadster does have a throttle. The XP Lite, I believe, does as well. So, that would help you as well. But, you might end up kind of in the same boat. But as for other options, if you're looking, at the $2,000 price point or above, the Lectric ONE is really the most affordable e-bike we've seen with the pinion gearbox and that automatic downshifting technology. We've talked about on the show a couple weeks ago, Priority e-bikes has a new Skyline model with a pinion gearbox, but that one is over double the price.
Premium price there.
Yeah, it starts around $4,000. But then you might want to look at some other options. So there are some other sort of internal gear hubs, either the Enviolo continuously variable transmission or CVT, or any IGH internal gear hub from Sturmey Archer. Those are things that you can downshift when you're at a standstill. So if you forget to downshift, you can just kind of crank that down and you're set. But just for examples of some models that we reviewed with those, and these are really focusing on the Enviolo CVT because we really haven't seen a whole lot with Sturmey Archer. But we were looking at the Avello Galaxy Lux. So you actually had that review come out a couple weeks ago. We have the Specialized Turbo Como IGH. They have a bunch of different spec tiers for that one, that range in price that we'll talk about here. And then the Ride One Up Prodigy V2. So if you are considering an upgrade, the Lectric ONE and the Prodigy V2 are both available, at least at the time of filming here, at a pretty steep discount. The one is around $1,900 and the Prodigy is around $2,600. And then the Turbo Como, that one is also on sale. It starts around $3,000 at the moment. But then again, depending on the spec level, that will go up. So that gives you a few options to work with, ranging from sticking with the Portola to some pretty nice upgrades. So hopefully you find something there. If you do decide to get a new bike, let us know what you think of it, what you go with. And as always, feel free to send us, photos, more information.
Yeah,
tell us what you think.
We love the follow-up. We're big fans of the follow-up. Please
We are.
let us know what you do with this, advice and us spouting things off.
Exactly. We're just two guys in a room, as we say. But anyway, moving on to a question from the Event and Solterra 2.5 review on YouTube. This comes to us from Kevin RU7YJ.
I'm not 7YJ.
Are you sure?
I am.
I'm glad. How long does it take to charge the battery, and is there a portable charger you can take with you?
So great questions. We can kind of give you some like general advice for anyone wondering how quickly you can charge a battery, but we'll also jump into it specifically here on the Solterra. So every bike comes with its own charger, of course, that you can bring with you and plug into any outlet. So from that point of view, it's technically like mobile. You can charge it anywhere. Sometimes charging is generally easiest with e-bikes like the Solterra that have removable batteries. So it's a little bit easier to bring inside if you don't want to figure out how to charge it outside in the garage or something like that. Now, as for charging time, this is something John does really good bringing up in his reviews. I'm getting better at it. I know I've overlooked it sometimes. I've seen the comments. I'm getting better. But we do try and talk about the chargers and charging time as well. The general rule of thumb is if you can find the amp output on the charger and the amp hours of the battery, it gives you that rough estimation of time. So for example, here with the Solterra, it has a 9.6 amp hour battery and comes with a 2 amp charger. So if we divide the battery's amp hours by the charger's amps, we get 4.8 hours. So just a little under 5 hours is your expected charge time from a fully depleted battery. So some e-bike brands are starting to increase the amps on chargers. That's actually one of the things that John and I have on our wish list for 2025 and moving forward to see.
Would love to see that.
The standard 2 amp, which is kind of, I don't know.
It's
batteries are getting bigger. We want to see the chargers get a little bit bigger as well. So we're hoping to see more 3, 4, 5. Heck, we've even had some like 12 amp chargers come through the doors lately, but we want to see that trend continue to grow. Now there are some aftermarket chargers as well that can do different things and potentially boost charging speeds, stuff like that. Just be very careful when you are looking into those. Make sure they're compatible with your system, of course. You don't want to get into anything too crazy. If you need another portable solution, you can technically take like a small power bank with you and try and plug that into your charger. That might be a workaround solution for charging on the go. But yeah, by and large, it's kind of the charging breakdown for you.
Yeah, so hopefully that helps.
All right, so next one comes to us from RM Kep from last week's episode, who had a little bit of news about Riese Muller on there. So this one says, as the owner of a 2023 Riese Muller Super Delight with a 14-speed roll-off gear hub and Gates belt drive, I'm concerned about warranty coverage and parts availability. That said, I'll ride this bike till I or it drops. More power to you.
Yeah, sounds like your bike, and that's huge. That's the goal. So yeah, for those who didn't watch last week's episode of the show, basically Riese Muller put out a statement about pausing shipments to the U.S. just in response to all the tariff stuff that we have covered ad nauseum. Now, I wanted to take this opportunity to just share a little bit about my experience owning a Stromer e-bike. Just considering Riese Muller's decision, it could possibly end up that they pull out of the U.S. market. Mm-hmm. We're not guaranteed on that. We definitely don't expect that company to go out of business. But if they pull out of the U.S. market, that's essentially the same thing that Stromer did last fall. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience after that.
Like, if I recall, when they said they were pulling out of the U.S., they said they were still going to take care of you on warranties. How'd they do, John?
They did, yeah. They did not do that.
They did not do that,
yeah,
no.
Stromer put out a statement saying basically that their supply chains were still going to be in place, that they were still going to handle all warranty claims and things like that. So I bought a Stromer ST2 on the secondary market, and it was from a bike rental company. It didn't have very many miles on it. It was in pretty good shape, but there was an issue with the headlight. So I knew that I needed to get a headlight replaced, but great price on the bike. Went ahead and, pulled the trigger, bought it, took it to a bike shop that was a former Stromer dealer, and basically found out very quickly that no bike shops that were former Stromer dealers in the US could actually contact or order parts from the brand overseas.
Not great.
Yeah. So I, called all over the place. I was talking to shops in Canada. They were able to get parts, but then the whole tariff thing kicked in, and they told me that their owners did not want to allow them to ship to the US. So it was like, okay, what am I going to do? At that point, I reached out, online all over the place, forums, communities, all that sort of thing, Reddit even. And fortunately, there was a guy in the Netherlands who is the owner of a Stromer dealer over there. He reached out and said, hey, I'm more than happy to help you out. Now, up front, that seemed like a relatively sketchy thing, because I was essentially wiring money blindly, but it really worked out. And shout out actually to Rampage Bikes here in St. George, who was able to do the work on my bike. So yeah, the bottom line with saying that is that I definitely ran into issues with buying a bike from a company that left the US market, but there are, there's a big community of e-bike owners and shop owners overseas outside of the country that may be able to help you out. So, I would definitely caution anyone looking to buy a bike from these brands. But, it's not the end of the world, and there are options out there. That said, specifically about Riese Muller, the tariff situation changes on a daily basis. So it's entirely possible or likely that will change again, and they will just decide to hang out here in the US without any disruption to business any more than has gone on already.
That's true. Anyway. And, like John and I, we said early on with the show, we try not to be too doom and gloom. We are optimists at heart. So Riese Muller, we hope you do better than John Stromer experience.
Yes,
the challenge
please.
Directly from us to you. Hey, make sure you're still taking care of your clients. I think it's a good word of caution to give people though, especially if you're going to get one secondhand. Who knows what part availability and stuff will be like. So something to keep an eye on. We're going to hope that, they do a little bit of a better job with support as they've kind of pulled back from the US potentially. We'll see moving forward, but hopefully good things. We'll hope for the best.
Also, Stromer, if you're watching, please do a little better. Anyway, moving on to our last question of the day. This comes to us from the best electric trikes list on the website from someone named Mona, who said, I am 68 years old, 4'10", looking for an E-Trike for campground. The road is a little sandy. Would these bikes ride okay on that? I wouldn't ride very far, but I will need something that holds charge for a bit, as I will be rustic and will be charging from generator unless battery can be pulled out and charged at home.
All right. So Mona, here's what I would say. So first of all, we were actually kind of looking at this list. This list got so out of date so quickly.
Yeah, there were so many trikes.
I was going to say
about trikes for weeks.
At the start of the year, it felt like there were just a handful of good recommendable trikes, and then all of a sudden everyone got in on the game. So regarding the trikes on here, that list of, I think there's 4 or 5 on there.
5, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So look, anytime you're riding on loose terrain, it is more beneficial to have a little bit of grip, a little bit of tread to the tires. So something with that style of tire is probably going to be a good thing if you are dealing with a lot of that loose, sandier type of stuff. So for bikes that we did have trikes, that we had on that list, we had the Retrospect Boca Rev. This is one that should work well for you. So one to consider there. Now, like I said, been a whole slew of new trikes that have come out since we did that list.
Yes.
Well, we're definitely gonna have to update that video soon, but you may also want to consider the Lectric Triker. Now, we are not done with testing on this one. We are midway through it right now, but it's been a very impressive trike that we've been very happy with. You mentioned a little bit in there something about charging issues. The electric bikes in the past have all been very good in terms of their battery life and maintaining a charge.
Referencing earlier about those 3 main battery cell manufacturers, they use cells from a great brand, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah, so we're expecting good test results to come back on that one. Again, not fully done yet, but give us some time, we'll get there. But it's looking very promising so far. Alternatively, something that you could look at is also the Lectric XP Trike. So this offers some of the best value in the industry, bar none, but it might be a good option if you can swap the tires, get something a little bit more knobby or more tready. Now, and just as a distinction and clarification here, if you're talking a regular paved path that maybe occasionally gets some sand blown and swept onto it, you don't need to have chunky tires. That is just something better if you are kind of dealing with cutting across an area that's maybe not fully paved and a little bit sandy or washed out that way. We would recommend something with more grip that way. But if it's just light amount of dusting, over paved stuff, you're probably going to be fine with any trike on that list or some of the more recent ones that have come out. Again, XP Trike 2, great example, the Triker. But yeah, so all in all, let us know which one you end up going with, and hopefully you get a lot of good rides in. So,
as always, make sure you let us know if you have any questions about any of the products that we have tested and reviewed. Again, as always, leave them on the individual reviews here on YouTube or down in the comments section. And again, that email address, questions@electricbikereport.com. All right, I'm still only snapping with one hand this week, but anyway, it's time for Deals of the Week. Deals of the Week.
Ooh, that was a good snap this week. I made up for my bad snaps last week.
And we were very in sync.
Yeah,
Good job.
Look at us.
Yeah.
Harmonizing.
Boom.
40
Right.
episode what? 47? Yeah,
47
weeks of
almost
practice.
50.
Look at us snapping together.
Crazy. Anyway, deals of the week this week are a little bit confusing just because we're coming off of Labor Day weekend where a lot of brands have sales that are kind of ending midweek. So
Where every brand said, sale ends Monday, and then they send out an email on Tuesday saying, just kidding, we extended the sale a few days like they love to do.
100%. Yeah.
Makes it a little bit murky for us, but we'll try.
Anyway, we try to pick things that are relatively safe that should still be around when this video goes live. But, if that's not the case, apologies. But anyway, starting things off over at the Specialized website. So earlier we talked about the Turbo Como IGH. The 4.0 model is probably the best deal going on there. So that is $1,250 off. That is down to $3,000. That's just a really nice, responsive, dialed-in city cruiser. But then there's also the Turbo Taro X 5.0, which is kind of a hybrid commuter / EMTB. That is $1,000 off. That is just $4,500. So anybody interested in hitting both single track and the paved streets on the way to work, that is one for you.
That's the bike to do it. Next up, we have a sale from Lectric. Talked about the Lectric ONE a little bit earlier in this episode. So their high-tech Lectric ONE with their fancy pinion stuff is wow, excuse me. Crazy discount. That's how good the discount is. It took my breath away.
Up, yeah.
So it is $500 off down to $1,899. Look, when that bike came out, our jaws dropped because nothing with like pinion on it was ever in the $2,000 to $3,000 price range. Now it's under $2,000, which is pretty ridiculous. We've often commented that bike's a little bit underrated now somehow. It's a lot of fun on two wheels. So if you're okay with a commuter with smaller 20-inch tires, this one's got a lot of awesome tech and a really fun and powerful motor to check out.
Yes, it does. But then wrapping things up, we've got Rad Power Bikes, Rad Deals, some things that have been going on for a little while here. Again, just trying to stay in the safe zone. So both the Radster Road and Trail, so that's a commuter and a sort of off-road fat tire e-bike, or mid-fat. Those are both $200 off from their original price. They're right around $2,000, $1,999. And then the Rad Expand 5, their folding e-bike, so that's the last gen model with a cadence sensor, that is $600 off, and that is just $1,000. So again, some good deals out there.
For sure. And like we said with Labor Day stuff, some of that gets extended. So you can always check out the best pages on our website. We have a lot of them, but any of those bikes, if you can find them on a lingering Labor Day sale, would be a great one to jump into, and we'd highly recommend. All right, just again, we love and appreciate our audience so very much. So thank you again for tuning in and watching and subscribing. And as a way to give back, we like to highlight a writer from our audience every week with a comment that caught our eye. John, who do we have this week?
This week we have Lamar T. Winters, who commented on the Ride One Up CF Racer 1 review on the website. Now, this is definitely a fairly lengthy comment, so I think we're going to kind of split it up here. But there's a lot of good info here, and I just really appreciated him sharing his experience on just riding that bike. So he said, I purchased this bike based on the reviews found on this site last year, so thank you very much. Overall, I've been very pleased with the handling and weight. The pedal assist is wonderful in terms of the range. I would caution folks to use the higher pedal 5 assist only when needed on steep grades. One must remember the motor is rated at 250 watts with a peak output of 540 watts, given the 15-amp controller. I often check the average and peak output numbers on the display when I finish a hilly ride. I look for an average of, say, 100 watts with a peak of, say, 370 watts when climbing a 7-degree grade. Running the motor at or close to its nominal power output of 250 watts will shorten the life of the motor. I mostly use pedal assist 3 or 2 when just cruising along flat or slightly elevated terrain.
I also believe the add-on battery is a must when doing 30 to 40 mile rides. I did not want to run the main battery down to below 20% or so on every ride. This will shorten the life of the main battery and give one less confidence on long rides in New England with more than a few hills. I upgraded the tires to the Schwalbe G1 Overland tires. I found these tires to be much better in terms of road resistance, and of course, you have the added puncture-proof technology. Removing the rear tire is impossible unless you add a longer cable from the controller, so you can remove the entire tire in the event of a flat. I had my local bike shop do this, and I am very pleased with the results. In addition, I had a failure with the bottom bracket and could hear the bearing crunching. Ooh. My bike shop installed a Wheels Manufacturing high-end BB, so I don't expect another failure of this type. In closing, I would say all the modifications done on this bike give me the confidence I need as I drive up to Maine this weekend. Well, happy time in Maine.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just always cool to me to, actually hear everyone's experience and how they modify and change their bike. And it sounds like he's really putting in the work. He's passionate, and I appreciate that.
This might surprise you guys to learn, but we actually talk to people about their bikes a lot. I'm just kidding. It surprises nobody. But, it's a lot of fun to just talk with people who get very passionate and into their bikes.
Yeah.
We do that a lot in person. And that kind of came through here on this comment that he left. So I did appreciate his experience, his modifications, his highs, his lows, and all that in between. Leaving comments of this size, the person cares deeply about their bike. And we always appreciate when people share their perspectives in addition to what we try to bring you guys every week. So thank you to Lamar, and thank you to the other, excuse me, struggling today. Thank you to the others out there who also leave us some comments. Hopefully we'll be picking you next week. All right, if you have made it to this point in the show, thank you so much. You're a real one for following with us the entire way. We couldn't be more appreciative of your support. As a reminder, you can share this with friends and family, especially the audio-only versions. We are available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Check us out there. Leave us some 5-star reviews. It's always greatly appreciated.
And as always, make sure you do all the YouTube things, comment down below, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, watch all of our reviews, read all of our content on the website, send us your questions, your photos. Yeah. That's what we're here for. So anyway, we'll catch you next week on The Weekly Recharge.